What's up, what's up, what's up, what's up, what's up, everybody, what's up, and welcome to the Planet Earth What's Happening podcast. I am your host, Brian Mooney. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Catherine Nicole Fragrance Collection. If you go to CatherineNicoleFragrance.com from now until the end of the month, you will receive a 30% discount on all your checkout items. And additionally, if you use the promo code PEWH10, you will receive an additional 10% discount on all your smell good items. So this weekend was UFC St. Louis Fight Night. It was last night. It was a great card. I enjoyed it. I stayed up almost to 1 o'clock in the morning watching this whole thing. We'll start you out with the preliminary card. Pollo Reyes defeats Matt Frivola by KO in the first minute of the first round. I actually enjoyed Matt Frivola. I thought he was going to make a good debut. I was intrigued to watch him because of his name. They call him Matt Frivola the Steamroller, so that kind of made me laugh a little bit. Moving on to the lightweight division, James Krause defeats Alex White by unanimous decision. To the main card, featherweight bout, Darren Elkins defeats Michael Johnson in his featherweight debut by rear naked choke in the second round. Moving on to the welterweight division, Kamaru Usman defeats Emil Meek by unanimous decision. He was actually saying after the end of the fight he was only 30%. I guess he was sustaining some injuries, but Usman is just a phenomenal wrestler. He was a national champion wrestler at the University of Nebraska, and he just dominated this entire fight from the ground. The co-main event, women's flyweight actually, Jessica Rose Clark defeats Paige Van Zant by unanimous decision. I got to give it up to Van Zant, though, because she broke her arm in the second round but with a spinning back fist, and if you guys look it up, she pulls a spinning back fist and hits Rose Clark in the side of the head, and you can just hear the snap. And I got to give it to Van Zant. She persevered, she toughed it out, and got through the whole fight with one arm. So that was amazing. And the main event of the night was Jeremy Stephens versus Do Ho Choi. Jeremy Stephens just completely obliterated Choi in the second round. It looked like it was going to be a solid fight. They were giving each other some solid strikes, but Stephens just came on, bum rushed him, and was way too powerful to end the night. Moving on into EPL scores, Crystal Palace defeats Burnley FC 1-0. West Ham defeats Huddersfield FC 4-1. Newcastle and Swansea City draw 1-1. West Brom dominates Brighton 2-0. Watford and Southampton, they draw 2-2. Chelsea and Leicester City draw at 0-0. Tottenham dominates Everton 4-0. Sadly to say, Bournemouth, they beat my Gunners Arsenal 2-1. I don't know what's going on with them this year, but they're starting to disappoint me. One of the final matches yesterday was a good one. Liverpool actually stops Man City's 22-game winning streak, beats them 4-3. That was an exciting bout. And today we have Man City versus Stoke City. That game's at 3 o'clock if you guys want to check that out. EPL standings, Man City just stays atop of the league, of course. They're up 15 points. Doesn't look like anybody's catching them anytime soon. You have a three-way tie between Man United, Liverpool, and Chelsea at second place. All of them have 47 points. Tottenham with 44 below that, and Arsenal with 39 below that. So that is my EPL news. And my guest today, he's actually somewhat of a mechanical connoisseur, if you call it. He was involved in Punkin Chunkin for years. He had a canon called Chunkinology. Him and his team, they would go to Punkin Chunkin all the time. Almost dominated. I think that he told me that the top that they finished was third. And now he is involved in a YouTube site called Redneck Manufacturing. He's a mechanical genius in my opinion. He lives a mile up the road from me here in Sussex County, Delaware. He's a really smart, intelligent guy. He actually makes me think of a quote from Albert Einstein that just says, the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. And this guy has plenty of imagination. Him and his team are actually featured on the Discovery Channel and the Science Channel. So if you Google them, actually, they still have a page on the Science Channel, and I found some videos of them interviewing him. So I hope you guys enjoy my next guest, and it is Rick Garloff.
Planet Earth.
What's happening?
Ricky G, what's up, man? How are you?
Not much.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I really wanted to get you on today because I really wanted to pick your brain about Redneck Manufacturing. I think it's fascinating. You got this up on YouTube. Tell me a little bit about it. How'd you get it started?
Well, Redneck Manufacturing just kind of came about by itself, actually. My mom had passed away, and my dad didn't have anything to do, so he started hanging out in my garage.
Yeah.
And the more he hung around, the more stuff that we started to build. So the more stuff we built, the more stuff we thought, we should probably videotape this. And I actually had an HD camera that was designed for a remote-controlled airplane. It was a very small camera. And some of my first videos that we posted were actually done with that little camera. It wasn't very good quality, and we just made it happen.
Yeah.
And over the course of time, we started on some different kinds of projects, videotaped it, put it on YouTube. We're not that good at it. We don't actually show the process as we weld, as we cut. I started to try to put some of that into it, but for the most part, we just go, here's what it was, here's what it looks like, and there's what it is.
Yeah, I noticed you do some of those time-lapse videos, too. Those are pretty cool. You can do that. You can do that like on the iPhone and all that kind of stuff. No, it's fascinating stuff. So how did you get into like the manufacturing and the engineering part of stuff? Is that something Dad was into, and he kind of passed that down to you, or is that something you both got into together?
I guess when it comes to the manufacturing aspect, I got to start way back from high school. So in high school, I was the kid that always wanted to do stuff that nobody else could do and have things that nobody else had.
Yeah.
When everybody was jumping their BMX bikes, I was learning to ride it backwards, sitting on the handlebars, facing backwards, and riding a BMX bike, because I was always the person that wanted that attention, I guess is what it is. And that kind of carried on throughout my life. 2 days after graduation, I was on my way to boot camp. I went to boot camp for the Navy out in San Diego. Got done at boot camp, went to apprenticeship school in Memphis, Tennessee, Millington, Tennessee area. Actually, that was backwards, Millington, Tennessee, Memphis area. And I guess that's where my love for manufacturing started. I went into the aviation industry. I was an AMS, and that's basically an aviation metalsmith. So they give you some sheet metal to go with, and they tell you what they want, and you kind of manufacture a section of a wing. And that's kind of where my manufacturing love started, and it just went from there.
And that just carried over into Redneck Manufacturing. How long has the page been up? How long have you been doing it for?
The page has been up for, I believe it's 5 years? I think it's 5 years, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed a lot of the videos. The one that caught my attention was the Railrunner. That thing was so cool. And I saw it on there. It looked like it got a lot of views on there, too. A lot of people looked like they were passing it around and sharing it. How did you come up with that concept? Like, how do these ideas, how do you brainstorm these ideas? Where do they come from?
Well, I know, most of your artists, your musicians, they smoke a little bit of wacky tobacco, and then they come up with some good ideas. But for us, it's just brainstorming. When it comes to the Railrunner, my dad always had a dream of riding on the rail. And without having an actual train to ride on, Dad started messing around with my brother. They started welding two bicycles together, but it was unsuccessful because one bicycle would try to get ahead of the other and it would derail. So, like I say, when my mom had passed away, my dad started hanging out down here, and that was one of the things that he had told me. He said, "Man, I'd love to build something to go on the railroad." And we were sitting here just like you and I are here, and we were brainstorming, and I had a piece of box tubing laying on the floor, and I put it up on two wood blocks, and I stood in the middle of it, and it didn't flex very much. I said, "Dad, I got an idea." And that's basically how the Railrunner came to life.
No, that's cool, man. That's really, was that your first little major project for Redneck Manufacturing, or?
Yeah, it actually was. We had some projects before that we didn't film. We made we called it the Black Widow, but it was actually, I think they call it a slider. It was a trike that we made with a bicycle front end and two go-kart wheels, and then we put plastic pipe over the go-kart wheels. And basically, you go down a hill, and if you type it into YouTube, I think they're called trike sliders or something like that. Guys are going down the hill, and they'll actually kick this thing sideways, back and forth, going down the hill. So we made a couple of projects prior to actually getting it on YouTube.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Now, when you got it on there, how did you get it to run? Was it like a self-propelled type thing? Was it a battery-operated motor? Did you put a motor in it, or was it just like you had to pedal it or something?
Well, we actually had a couple of versions. Dad came up with a version that was actually a tractor that we adapted axles to with some wheels that we had made.
Okay.
But it was too heavy in the center of the track, and the axles kind of flexed real bad. So we scrapped that idea, and then we went with the box tubing idea. But I forgot the damn question.
How did you get it to run?
How did we get it to run? It was basically a go-kart setup. So we had a Briggs & Stratton engine. Okay. We had a centrifugal clutch that drove a chain, that drove a sprocket, that drove the wheel on the track.
Cool.
So
how fast did it go?
Too fast.
Too fast?
Yeah.
I saw some of those videos. I wasn't sure if you like sped up the video for effect, and I'm like, man, they look like they're flying down that track.
Yeah. We couldn't get a big enough gear for the axle. So it was geared a little bit too high.
Yeah.
It was hard to get going, but once you got it going, the minimum speed was about 14 miles an hour. So that video was not sped up at all. And if you if any of your listeners want to go to my YouTube channel and look for the Railrunner, I'll put a link or somehow for my guys. They know where it's at.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was too fast. Yeah, it was too fast. Sure. Sitting on a chair, looking down at railroad ties as they go underneath you.
It almost looked like a classroom chair or something like that.
It was actually a bass boat chair.
Oh, okay.
Is what it was.
It looked like a little plastic chair. I'm like, man, that thing is flying down the track.
Yeah, so
that's interesting, man.
Yep.
That's real good stuff. Now, you were involved in Punkin Chunkin, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the listeners a little bit about that. How did you get involved in the Punkin Chunkin?
Well, over the years, I was very fortunate to be on the Discovery Channel, as well as RDF Media over in, I believe it was England or Britain. I'm not sure what country that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were featured on a couple of different channels and shows and stuff. But the way we got into it was back in, I think it was 1990.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, Dominic, I'll just say his first name.
Okay.
He got me involved with it. He said, you want to go to Punkin Chunkin? I said, what in the world is Punkin Chunkin? He said, man, if you've never been there, you won't believe it. So we went there, and Dominic is a local, so he knew all the guys that were shooting pumpkins there.
Yeah.
And, man, it was just awesome, seeing all these contraptions. And me and Dominic, we started talking about putting one of these machines together, and one year would go into the next, and the next year would go into the following year, and we just didn't get around to it because summertime comes around, you get busy cutting grass, you get busy doing life. So the following year, he would call me up and say, "Are you going to Punkin Chunkin?" Absolutely, Yeah. And we did that for about 4 years, and then Dominic finally went out and built a machine without calling me. I went over to his house. There was a machine in his driveway. It was an air cannon.
Yeah.
And I left him a note because he wasn't home, and I said, Dominic, why didn't you call me? And he called me back. He said, well, this guy gave me the tank, so I put him on the team. This guy did my welding, so I put him on my team. And he named off all the positions that were available on his team. And I said, you know what? Don't worry about it, bud.
Yeah.
I said, I'll come get you. I'll come get you. He was actually a good person to help me get the machine put together. He helped me find the tank to put it together. And that's how I got involved with Punkin Chunkin, and Chunkinology was born.
Yeah, I remember that. Now, they had different categories for the Punkin Chunker. They had like a catapult, right? You could do didn't they have different types of chunkers in categories? When I was watching the Discovery Channel stuff, it's almost like they had everyone boxed into a category. They had air cannons, they had catapults, all kinds of stuff. Did they have, weren't kids trying to do it too? Didn't they have a kids category one year and kids were throwing pumpkins or whatever?
Yeah, and it's funny how that worked. A lot of schools got involved with it because it was a good learning experience for the kids.
For science, absolutely.
Absolutely, yes. You got to figure out your trajectory, your angles, your speeds, your air time, and that'll all give you your distance in the long run.
Yeah.
There are quite a few categories. The category that we were involved with was the adult air division.
Okay.
And they had a youth air division as well.
Yeah.
Now, of course, everybody knows that a little 8-year-old kid can't weld. Some kids out there may be able to weld. I'm not saying that all kids can't weld.
Yeah, some parents are like, all right, get out there and I'll teach you how to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like I tell my 6-year-old when he's being bad. I'm like, just go outside and dig a hole or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So, I'm not saying that not everybody that's 8 years old cannot weld, but for the most part, the parents are involved with the build, And when it comes time for the event, the child has to be able to pull the trigger, pull the handle, whatever it is to launch the pumpkin.
Has to work.
Yeah.
How far did Chunkinology, what was your longest distance?
We are a member of the 4,000 Foot Club, but not by much. I think it was 4,021 feet.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, this is a fish story, a fish tale. Our very first year at Punkin Chunkin, up here in the Hurdles Field, right off of Hollyville Road in Harbison, Delaware, Millsboro, Delaware.
Yeah.
Our first year out, we didn't know what to expect. We had test shot maybe 3 pumpkins before the event. On Friday, the first day of the event, we just barely pressurized our vessel, and because we didn't want to pie in front of everybody. And we had a decent shot.
Now, what's a pie? That's like a bum cannon shot. I guess explodes out of the cannon or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. That's exactly what that is. So if you shoot a pumpkin out of the barrel and it comes apart, that's considered
pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie. Yeah. You don't want to eat pumpkin pie.
Okay. I gotcha.
So we didn't want to pie on the first day, so we shot low pressure. The second day, we were like, let's just give it a little more. You know, so we did. And then on Sunday, we juiced it up pretty good. And the pressure vessels are certified through the state of Delaware, so they were certified to be able to perform in front of a public audience. It's a long story. It all costs money, is what it is. But on Sunday, we pressurized it fairly well, and we shot a pumpkin deep into the woods. The spotters are the guys that are out there on the 4-wheelers, and they watch your pumpkin come out into the field.
And they chase it down.
And then they're the ones that mark it so they can measure it.
Yeah.
The spotters gave us an idea. They said, you went between this tree and that tree over there. And you were like 30 feet in the air when you went over that tree, you know. So we went back in there. My whole team was back in there. We had 2 hours to find that pumpkin. And we found bits and pieces. But one of the things that the Punkin Chunkin Association makes each team do is they mark their pumpkin with their pit number all over the pumpkin.
Okay.
And then they have a paint that they paint each day, so that way they don't see a pumpkin and think that it's the shot of the day.
Yeah.
So maybe Friday the paint was orange, on Saturday the paint was green, and then on Sunday the paint was purple.
Yeah.
That way when they find a pumpkin, okay, it's purple, and I see a number 7 for pit number 7, so they know that it's your pumpkin for that day.
All right.
So we did find pieces of the pumpkin back in the woods. Unfortunately, they couldn't find the paint for the day or a pit number for the day, so we didn't get credit. But here's the fish story. If we would have found that pumpkin our first year out, we would have finished in first place.
Oh, man.
Okay, I'm done with my fish story.
Oh, man. And those were the good old days, too.
Those were the good old days.
Yeah, nowadays it's like I feel like, well, I hear that Punkin Chunkin's just having trouble, but it's almost like they should just figure out a way to track the things. Maybe spike like a tracking device in all the pumpkins or something, and just when they shoot off and you get them out there, have like a drone or some sort of technology that could keep track of them. I mean, especially if it's on the Discovery Channel now. I mean, you might as well just go, all right, well, we could track its trajectory on where it went just using like some sort of camera technology or whatever.
Right.
I mean, that's what they do in golf now, but that's interesting stuff, man.
It's funny that you say that. One of the members of the association, he actually contacted a few people, and there is a microchip that you could have inserted into the pumpkin. Wow. The unfortunate part about that is, for the air cannon guys, we don't want to deviate that pumpkin at all. We don't want to mark it, scratch it, because any scratch or hole is just an area where the air could enter and blow it apart, and then we'd be shooting pie. How
do you build up the air pressure in the tank when you go to shoot? Is it like you use CO2, or how do you build up enough pressure enough to kick it off?
A lot of guys would like to use nitrogen.
Okay.
Because nitrogen molecules are smaller, you can get more molecules per square inch.
Okay.
But for regulation purposes, for the Punkin Chunkin Association, it was simply compressed air. So what we used was a pull-behind air compressor like you would see your local irrigation company using to blow out the irrigation, or the jackhammer guy out on the road. I don't even think people operate jackhammers anymore. I think that's all done by bobcats. But
yeah, probably. I don't know. We still have one on our crew with the company we work for. Yeah, we still use it every once in a while. We try not to, but
yeah. So it's a great big air compressor.
Yeah.
And we use that to get the volume built up in your tank. And then we get compressed air cylinders, just like a welder would have the cylinders of oxygen and acetylene. Punkin Chunkers get bottles of compressed air that is compressed with a compressor that is designed to do scuba tanks, very high pressure, low volume. And then once we get our volume in our tanks, because I was shooting with a 500-gallon tank, and that's water terms. Air terms, that deviates with pressure. But, we would use that pull-behind air compressor to get our volume and then use compressed air tanks to get our pressure. And we did have a pressure that we were certified to, so we had relief valves that we couldn't go over that pressure. So it was very well regulated and for the public safety.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely sounds like it. It sounds like as it got bigger, too, there was more rules and regulations. I mean, what was it? Last year, a couple years ago, they had a tank explode or something, and some girl got hurt. I think that's why they're having issues with Punkin Chunkin now, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's it wasn't a tank that exploded. What it was a loading chamber. That when we load our pumpkins, we have to have a hatch that we can open up and put our pumpkin inside, because it's hard to breech load. In some cases, 140-foot barrels is what those guys. So it's hard to breech load a pumpkin 140 foot down your barrel. You can do it with some PVC pipe and like a toilet plunger, But for general purpose, what you have is you have a piece of steel pipe that you cut an area out of, and you hinge it, and you latch that. So you can unlatch it, open it up, load your pumpkin on, and it's on hinges. So that particular instance, or that particular accident, was caused by that loading chamber actually becoming dismembered from the barrel. I don't know if that's the right terminology.
That sounds like scary stuff.
But the troubles actually started before that, because we had a gentleman on a four-wheeler that was one of our spotters that was chasing a pumpkin, was looking in the opposite direction, and he didn't see a hard-packed road in the field, and when he struck it, the four-wheeler took a tumble, and I believe that gentleman is still in a wheelchair. I believe he's paralyzed because of that accident. So that was actually the start of the downfall for Punkin Chunkin.
Oh, man. I know. It seemed like as it got a little bit bigger, as the TV cameras came rolling around, it's like all of a sudden you started hearing about these little problems. And I'm just like, man, this used to be when I was a kid, and I moved down here from New Jersey with my mom and dad and my sisters, and it was like a local fun event. We came down here and we were like, Punkin Chunkin? Like, what the hell is that? But we went, and it was like a fun local event, and then it started getting so big, and that's usually when the problems arise, when the TV cameras start rolling.
Yeah, without getting into details, whenever a nonprofit starts making money, everybody kind of...
The eyeballs are on.
Yeah, everybody has their hand out as well.
Yeah, the regulatory agencies are trying to get their hands in there. Well, I mean, we're going on 20 minutes now. What I wanted to ask you was, we'll segue back into Redneck Manufacturing. What's next? What are you working on right now with Redneck Manufacturing?
Well, we always have some kind of project going on.
It seems that way. Looking around, at least for my listeners, we're in Rick's. We'll call it his work, his base. I mean, he's got all kinds of neat stuff around here.
And I got to tell you, I built the shop that we're in.
Yeah. I mean, I know, man. Like I've known for a long time that you've been very good. You've been very mechanically inclined, and it's awesome. It definitely is.
But what's next for Redneck Manufacturing? Well, we are currently working on a project that I'm calling the Monster Quad.
Okay.
Basically, it is a four-wheeled vehicle. The wheels are 4 foot in diameter, actually 4'6" from top to bottom. Originally, I was going to make it pedal powered. But I'm not real good with precision engineering. I'm pretty good, with close engineering, but not precision.
Yeah.
But whenever you run chains and sprockets and pedals from the front to the back of something that is, I think it's 12 foot long, you have no room for deviation. So the sprockets and everything. Yeah. So we actually opted, and my viewers have already seen this video, where my dad comes in on a handicap scooter, and I said, hey, we just got our motor for our Monster Quad. So I believe it's going to be motorized. But going forward, there are a couple of projects that back in the day, we did. One of the projects was, we call it the Redneck Segway, or the Redneck Segway, I guess is what we called it, mode of transportation. And that thing had 7-foot diameter wheels. And basically it had it was driven by hydraulic motors that came off of a 0-turn lawnmower.
Okay.
It had a Briggs & Stratton on the front of a pivot. And you or me sat on the back side of the pivot. And when I say pivot, that was basically something that hung down between the two 7-foot diameter wheels, and it was powered by hydraulics.
Okay.
That is also on my YouTube channel. We called it the mode of transportation originally, and then one of my viewers said, "Man, that's the Redneck Segway." I said, "That's a new name for it."
There you go.
But very cool. One person can ride it. It has to be adapted to different weights because it kind of works on a teeter-tot basis.
Almost like I think I saw that it was on 2 wheels, and you almost had to your body weight kind of countered with it, right?
Yes.
With the weight of the engine, it almost looked like one of those monowheel things, but just it only had 2 wheels. You ever see those monowheel motorcycles where the guys sit inside and it's like just the one wheel? It almost reminded me of something like that, where it needed your body weight to keep the thing floating upright. Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, it's amazing because I live a mile down the road, and all this is going on down here. It's fun stuff, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on. Rick Garloff, everybody, please subscribe to his YouTube channel, Redneck Manufacturing. Again, appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Brian, thank you for having me, and like I say, thank you for allowing me to videotape this so I can put it on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, it was fun stuff, man. We killed 2 birds with 1 stone. All right, everybody, we'll see you later. Yes. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that episode of the podcast. I sure did. I want to thank Rick Garloff again for taking the time to come on my podcast. Everybody, please go subscribe to his YouTube channel, Redneck Manufacturing. I'm sure you will get some kicks out of it. I sure did. I also want to take a brief second to thank my buddy Corey. He was my last guest on this podcast. I sent him a couple sound bites, and he put together a new opening song for me. And he did a really good job, and I appreciate the time he took to do that. So as promised, on this day in history, January the 15th, 2018, on this day in 1865, Fort Fisher in North Carolina falls to Union troops, and Wilmington, North Carolina, the Confederacy's most important blockade-running port, is closed. When President Abraham Lincoln declared a blockade of southern ports in 1861, rebel engineers began to construction on a fortress at the mouth of the new inlet, which provided access to Wilmington. With 20-foot-high palisades and landmines, Fort Fisher was constructed to pose a formidable challenge for the Yankee troops. Also on this day in history in 1929, we are celebrating Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King Jr. is born in Atlanta, Georgia. King received a doctorate degree in theology, and in 1955 helped organize the first major protest of African-American civil rights movement, the successful Montgomery bus boycott. Influenced by Mahatma Gandhi, he advocated civil disobedience and nonviolent resistance to segregation in the South. Also on this day in history in 1953, John Foster Dulles argues that U.S. foreign policy must strive for the liberation of captive peoples living under communist rule. Though Dulles called for more vigorous anti-communist policy, he remained vague about exactly how the liberation would take place. When asked during the hearing whether he supported the policy of containment, which sought to restrain the further expansion of communist power, Dulles responded by declaring, we shall never have a secure peace or happy world so long as Soviet communism dominates 1/3 of all the peoples. If you don't know who John Dulles is, he's actually the brother of Allen Dulles, the first director of the CIA. And finally, on this day in history, a little sports history for you to celebrate the playoffs and the coming of the Super Bowl. On this day in 1965, at the Los Angeles Coliseum, the Green Bay Packers beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the first ever World Championship game in American football. In the mid-1960s, the intense competition for players and fans between the NFL and the upstart AFL Football League led to talks about a possible merger. It was decided that the winners of each league's championship would meet each year in a single game to determine the world champion of football. Well, that's all the history I have for you guys today. Again, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I seem to be improving as I'm going along. If you have any feedback or if you are interested in being a guest or a sponsor, please email me at planetearthpodcast@outlook.com, or you could just DM me on Instagram or Facebook. See you guys.